Hey, good afternoon. It's 1:05 p.m. It is Friday. I am very happy to be home right now. It's May 16th, and usually I have these moments of boredom in my house. Like, it's like, oh, I want to get out of the house. But right now, I'm actually happy about being in where I am right now. I did go to the store earlier, and I did post a video. I was in the park, and the other little squirrels were out there. I didn't film them, but they were definitely out there having fun, and they are so cute. I like squirrels. So anyway, now that I'm home, I'm gonna kind of settle in and just kind of relax, and then of course start on my project. Now I'm gaining momentum in excitement about working on my project now, and I think it's because, I have finally finished doing the first set of videos. Okay, I'm actually making two at the same time, and now I decided to change the visuals of the first video, and I'm feeling more confident about it. Like I like the way I honestly would say that. I'm sure another person could do better when it comes to the visuals, right? I'm sure they could, okay? But I'm grateful for the progress that I'm making on selecting visuals or pictures or whatever they slides. Because before I felt as though the way it looked, it was kind of like all over the place. And I wanted this to be in logical order, especially because I'm taking this very seriously. Okay, so yeah, while I was at the store, I was thinking, a little bit more. Thoughts started flashing through my mind. Okay, like about because last night when I was in my room, I kept getting this message about the moon landing, the moon landing. What kind of mess? And I kept thinking, okay, what moon landing could it be? Because as far as I know, there's two moon landings. There was a moon landing that was supposed to have occurred like in the 1960s, okay, and there's a moon landing, that I briefly saw on Facebook, came through my reel. And so I think must have caught the very end of this particular moon landing because what it was like, I guess the guy Jeff Bezos, I think that's his name. He opened the door and he let these people out or something like that. And so all the little crew came out and stuff like that. And I thought, oh, okay, you know, I didn't think much of it. To me, it's just another Facebook reel. I don't really watch things like a lot of other people do. So, but I keep getting the feeling though that it was some sort of jab. It was meant to be some sort of jab. Okay, like it was meant to be directed towards me. And I keep thinking this is an absurd thing, right? Because it doesn't make any sense. And then the message of, the apparition of my father was coming through, right? It was that somebody felt like they wanted to do something, astronomical or something big because people feel as though my apparition is kind of a big deal. I get tired of people like competing against me because I feel as though in this part of my life I wish I had sincere relationships. Okay, I don't have sincere relationships. I have feeders, I have abusers, I have people who are fake people in my life, and when the issue of my father apparition following me, I do believe it is divine. Okay, like I said, these people created all kinds of drama for me to where there was a time where people literally wanted me dead. I mean, she had people turned against me like you will not believe. Okay, all because of me being a clone and me having no knowledge of it. But she knew she could take advantage of this, and her collaboration with these Nazi and Rex Laverne and these other people, and it got very toxic. Okay, so I had no one, including and they were doing covert stuff to my own child so that I would not have any information, what was going on, okay? And they were using my son as some sort of double agent, okay? Which they should be ashamed of themselves. And yes, I hate you. And yes, I don't talk about it to my son. There's been times where out of frustration, I will let him know that I believe that some people were after me and that these people created this issue. Okay. And then he tries to just kind of change the subject. I will tell you the look on his face now that he realized that he's been used. It is quite devastating. So, yeah, I realized that there was some toxicity that was going on in my life. And going back to the moon landing thing, if that was meant to, if Diana Ross was creating or collaborated with people to have some sort of moon landing, I didn't see Elon Musk in the moon landing. Okay, the only person I saw was Jeff Bezos. I think he might have been the only male figure in there. I think there was two people, only two people that I recall recognizing that I had seen. I remember seeing the lady who is known as Oprah's friend, and also Gail. I believe her name is Gail, and then I believe her name is Carrie Perry, Katy Perry. Okay, so I remember these and recognize these faces, but I'm starting to think, okay, well maybe she was trying. See, women like to play games. They like to play games, and sometimes I'll use other women to stand in for they're because they're incapable of being attracted. Because I did take a note that everybody on the what do you call it, the rocket or whatever you want to call it were I would consider to be nice looking women. Okay, so I would think, okay, if this is some sort of collaboration, okay, or something that was supposed to make me jealous, okay, I'm going to tell you one thing. I suppose it's a form of entertainment, and I didn't think about being jealous. Okay, and I will also say that if I was in a relationship, now let's just say, for example, okay, Elon Musk created this thing, right, that he wanted to make me jealous because, or maybe he wanted to get my attention or something, like, because people do stuff like that. You know what I would be thinking? I would be thinking that I would want to steer clear of Elon. I would want to steer clear of Elon because this is a form of abuse. Why? Because he would be trying to compare me to other women, and this would be his way of controlling me within a relationship. Okay, and I wouldn't do that. Also, if I did have a relationship with somebody, that relationship would be considered sacred, meaning it would be sacred to where I would see the purpose of keeping it out of public view. It is not to be exploited. It's supposed to be upheld and treasured. Okay, this is why, I don't like relationships, because people do not understand how to cherish one another. Okay. So yeah, I think the standards of the world are very crappy. And I know I was not offended by the moon landing, but I do think, I get tired of people, if this is true, okay, I get tired of people wanting to compete with me, because really I would prefer to just be able to have, like, if I had a girlfriend, someone I could really enjoy and stuff like that, I would love to find somebody who had high standards. Yeah, I mean, I deserve to have people who have high standards. This is the kind of people that I want in my life, okay? And unfortunately, I'm around people who, such as Diana Ross or whatever, that I don't want have anything to do with her. And the message that I get from her is like, everybody wants to blame it on somebody else. In these situations where you're dealing with human trafficking, and people know good and well that they had a hand in it, they always want to blame somebody else. Diana Ross would be happier if I fixated on the white, Nazi influence. The Nazis want to sit here and talk about what a bitch Diana was, and there's people in the community who are sitting here, pointing fingers at everyone else. Okay, the point is that it shouldn't have happened in the first place. It really shouldn't have happened in the first place. There are laws on the books that should have protected me from going through this sort of trauma. Okay, and this is what I'm saying is, like, there's a lot of people who do not know the laws. They do not know how to behave. And the reason why they don't know how to behave, it's a combination of mental illness and neglect. Neglect. If your parents did not tell you, how the difference between right and wrong for your own safety, because the things that people think that they are entitled to do, or the things that they think it's okay to do, are outright criminal. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you had a parent who cared about you, they would be cultivating an individual who knows how to stand strong and survive without having to resort to certain forms of debauchery. Yes, morals. Okay, and this is what I'm saying. It's like, this is why you can't, a lot of these people can join churches and they don't have any concept of what is right and what is wrong. And yes, I am a social scientist, and yes, I do study this, and yes, it does matter to me. And yet, every situation in my life that I have gone through, I have used as a form of my study. And I laugh because, like, I think about certain people who are getting in my face, being so freaking obnoxious. And yes, these people to me are nothing but my study subjects. You certainly couldn't be my friend. So since you're going to use me, I'm going to use you right back. You are my study. You are my prime example of narcissistic behavior. You're my prime example of sociopathic behavior. That's what you are. Okay, so this is why I'm saying I realize that it's a combination of why people are walking around doing these crimes, why we have knots in our economy, such as things like human trafficking, why we have all these problems with things like DEI and, these little private, secret, covert wars that people allow to happen, including law enforcement. Including law enforcement. So, yeah, okay, I'm getting another message about the moon landing. Okay, let me see here. Okay, people are okay. Yeah, a lot of people are talking about Diana Ross. Okay, now I talked about a couple days ago about mental illness being contagious in certain situations. Okay, I had brought up the issue of how people committed suicide. When I'm talking about the Guyana tragedy, we had Jim Jones and it convinced people to drink the Kool-Aid. We had the Hell's Gate, Heaven's Gate guy. We had the Applewhite guy. We had the guy who the guy camping, Harold Camping, who convinced people to sell all of their property and quit their jobs and only for the world not to end. This kind of delusional type stuff. Okay, we talked about this sort of stuff that can spread to people. You know what I mean? And this is exactly what happened. Okay, and it was fueled by several different factors. A lot of it was fueled by the church activity, and also the church, wanted to penalize people for having a relationship with me. One of the main things that they do when in human trafficking is isolate the victim. Isolate the victim. Make her look like she's the bad person so that she does not receive the support that she's supposed to receive. This is the main tactic that human traffickers, do. And it's not like, and it's funny because it's not like they get a manual on how to traffic somebody. Traffickers pretty much resort to the same tactics because deep down inside they intuitively know if you cut people off of social connections, they won't have any way to survive. Okay, so this is an illegal operation, and this should have been, and I had made it very clear. This is not, me making the moral reset is kind of, some of it is a combination of things I have pretty much already created, but I'm adding a lot more. Okay, because I'm actually talking about enlisting the laws. Okay, I am listing them for your view, for your convenience. Okay, and yeah, I mean, and to me, like I said, the reason why you can't claim ignorance is because, this is how the law looks at things. If people claimed ignorance, then people could get away with anything. People have to be held accountable. And yes, each state expects people to be well informed of the law. Okay. And, by creating a moral reset, I'm giving people the opportunity to get an education on these topics. And for people who claim to have studied these things in school, such as, these so-called, majors in psychology and, majors in law or whatever, now this is your chance to get re-educated. And hopefully it'll stick this time. You know? It's like I deal with a lot of condescension, with people, and this is what I'm saying. Okay, people with like Diana's Ross's mentality of defiling relationships. If the moon landing was in some way trying to create some sort of jealousy or whatever, I don't want a relationship like that. Okay. I do not want to base relationships on petty stuff, sort of arguments, worrying about, is this girl a threat to me? If that kind of stuff is going to go on, then I'll just keep moving. Okay, I don't even care about it because it's for my own well-being. Okay, so hopefully, I think Elon Musk, I think that it was something that was created by Diana. And like I said, if it was from Elon Musk, okay, if he was like, I'm gonna get her attention, I'm gonna get all these women, these gorgeous women, throw them on a rocket, and like throw Jeff Bezos in there just to like, throw icing on the cake, and then take jabs at Maria, right? Some people think that, trying to making somebody jealous in a relationship is going to somehow enhance their relationship. I will tell you that is a telltale sign that this person would abuse you. Okay, and I understand that. Okay, so like I said, in order to have true intimacy, you have to make sure that that relationship is held high on a pedestal. High on a pedestal. You know what I mean? And this is something that most people do not understand. And like, I truly love my son. This is the reason why I'm upset that that bitch stole my money. Because the greatest gift that you could ever wish for your child is to have a better life than you'd have ever had. Okay, and I will tell you, I had nothing but shit in my life, and this is one of the reasons why I'm angry that this creepy bitch came, creeping around and even having any access to my son and poisoning him in any way, affecting his life in any way. As I was thinking today, I remember my mom would tell me about my dad. My dad used to. The reason why my dad came to California is because now I'm starting to see the connection of what he had to deal with as one of these burden babies. Because, my father was a very intelligent man. I really, I got to tell you, I respect the hell out of that man. I loved my father, okay? But my father, was a burden baby when you really think about it. And because from what I understand, his stepfather, okay, was illiterate. He couldn't read. So, they put a lot of responsibility on my father. And when my father married my mother kind of felt like, there's a lot of times in family dynamics, there's a lot of tension between the bride and the man's mother, right? Well, the man's mother, in my case, Louise, she kind of relied on my dad a little too much. You know what I mean? It was always, calling him up, and I guess they used to call him Sonny. Sonny this, Sonny that, I need this, I need that. And that pissed my mom off. So she was like, okay, I want to move as far away from Pennsylvania than we possibly can, okay? And I do believe that they lived in Detroit for a while. They lived in Detroit for a while, I believe, okay? And he could have met Diana Ross there, I don't know, okay? But we ended up coming all the way out, well, my family, my mother and my father, came all the way out from one side of the United States all the way to the other. And the main reason why she wanted him to be stationed in California, because she was tired of his family sucking him dry. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's an option if a child wants to help a child wants to help their parent. Okay, and a lot of times, if you cultivate a loving relationship with your children, okay, one that is balanced with love, as well as, sometimes families create, family businesses together and they grow that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a lot of outright exploitation, when it comes to things like foster children. God knows that people took advantage of burden babies and stuff like that. So the reason why my father came to California was because he himself was a burden baby and was tired of it, sick of it. Okay. And so, I'm putting these things together now, and I'm angry that my biological mother is such a fucking, leech. You know what I mean? It angers me. It angers me, but it's a really good example. It's a good example of the bullshit lie that, I was talking about how I don't believe in what do you call it? The idea of promoting supremacy, okay? And it's not, when I say that, I'm a black person, okay? I'm a black person. And, I understand that when it comes to, a lot of times black people will be very hypocritical about this issue about, oh, we want to see black people advance. We want to see this, okay? But this bitch has her fucking foot on my goddamn neck. This bitch has her foot on my goddamn neck. Okay, I could have had better things in life, and I had opportunities to have things in life, but she sat there and she fucking prevented it. Oh, I thought you were interested in advancing black people. Well, guess what? She didn't. Not me. You see what I'm saying? I don't believe that people are as unified as they say they are. Okay, in this world we have ourselves. Okay. And so this is one of the reasons why I've never felt like, okay, well, I'm going to need to support this person just because they're black. No, it has to be a little bit more than that. It really does. Okay. So yeah, I'm a little pissed off about that. What else is going on? Yeah, people think that I should submit my information directly to things like the Department of Education for California, as well as Donald Trump. I'm careful about these sort of things, okay? Because, like I said, I'm a targeted individual, and I'm concerned about things like interception of spies and people who want to tamper. And see, my goal, okay, and this is a form of philanthropy. It's not meant for me to, make money off of this project. It is to actually better the country and hopefully, the rest of the world. Okay. I do think it's important that people learn these things, okay, for their own well-being. and also to actually cleanse, get rid of people who are overly dependent. Get rid of them. You know, there's one thing to have to rely on certain services at certain times in our lives, okay? I understand that, okay? But people who literally sit here and strategically figure out and plan all this sort of stuff, it's just like, come on, okay? I know I would have never chosen this sort of life. I mean, I don't like getting on any sort of assistance. You know, I'm an able-bodied woman. I'm somebody who enjoys getting up in the morning, going to work, and I always wanted to work long term. You know what I mean? Long term. I never meant to work one job here, work a year here, 2 years here. I'm lucky if I work 2 years here, then I got to start all over again. No, I want consistency. I would like stability in this life. Okay? And that's the best thing you can ever wish for somebody. And this fucking bitch had her foot on my neck. Yeah, I'm pissed off. Okay, and I keep getting these feelings about Elon Musk. Okay, yes, I do have a total crush on him, right? Anyway, this particular imposter, and I don't know if he's an imposter or not, okay, but I'm just gonna call him an imposter. Right? I'm gonna call him because you know, if I'm poking at Elon, right, and because I really do want him to talk to me, but I don't want to make sure that it's him, because if I was wasting my time talking to a trickster, perhaps even my fucked up mom, who to me is like a sociopath, you know, I can't even deal with that thought, okay, but I was hoping that I was talking to Elon, because that's just the way it is, okay. But this particular person, I asked him, like, okay, if I could bake you something, what would it be, right? And I kept thinking, oh my goodness, I would love to bake him chocolate chip cookies. Like, I would absolutely love that. But see, Diana Ross doesn't understand that you don't play around with those sort of things. Okay? You don't mess around with those sort of things. She is too intrusive, and I don't appreciate it. And I don't like who she is as a person. Okay? And what she did was wrong, and what it is criminal, and do not ever stand in my life ever again. Ever. It's not a joke. I do get the feeling that it was her. Okay? And, you know, I don't know what kind of dessert, you know, Elon Musk likes, but I would love to bake goods for him, because I adore the guy. I think he's very cute. Anyway, but, you know, aside from that, what else am I getting? I get these messages that people do accept me as my unique individual. See, I understand they were trying to change who I am and my views and how I behave and how I live and how I think and everything like that. See, what they were wanting me to do is be miserable on their behalf. And that is an absurd thing to ask anybody. That is an absurd thing to ask anybody. Okay, like, can you reduce, this, and this is what I'm telling people, this is how ignorant these people are. No, you cannot, I will not be, you know, reduce the quality of my life for anybody in my life. For anyone. That's absurd. You know what I mean? But Diana Ross has this sort of mentality. I don't love the woman, nor do I like this woman. Okay? I don't like her at all. So if she ends up dying in the street, if she hasn't killed herself already, you know, whatever. You know what I mean? And it's not that I don't have compassion. I do have compassion. I'm probably one of the most compassionate people you can possibly ever imagine. I know how to treat people I care about well. I know how to show attention, okay? It's not that. It's just that, you know, she has not done anything that warrants any sort of concern from me. You know what I mean? And besides, I love my life, and I cherish my life, and I cherish my views. Okay? And this whole moon landing thing, okay, I would not have wanted to be on that rocket. I would have no desire to be on a rocket. I've never dreamed of being on a rocket or anything like that, okay? If, like I said, if Elon Musk wants to communicate with me, it's none of Diane Ross's business. No one can prevent that, or at least legally prevent that. He has the right to communicate with me if he chooses to, okay? I also get the message that I am free. It says, you are free to wear whatever I want. Of course I am. And see, I find it offensive that in 2025, that's even something that I would even have to bring up. You know what I mean? My clothes are the only thing that I care about. Okay, a couple other things, okay, that I care about. I don't care about really anything in this world. Okay, I do not give a shit about, you know, my biological family. I don't give a shit about my adoptive family. I used to love the idea of focusing on my career. I have now split those things into different sections in my mind, okay? My projects are what light me up, okay? If I'm lucky enough to work for a half decent employer, I guess that's great, okay? But, I feel as though the outside world has nothing to offer me except for some bullshit, like some misery, some stupid stuff. And I understand most people, and this is not me being an arrogant person, it's the facts. I know how to act. I know how to live and I know how to think. Okay. And I remember when I was working at BT Trucking, they brought this so-called person in. He was talking about, when you step into your career, you have to, be willing to change this. No, this is not true. Okay. When you step into your ideal career, it is in harmony with who you are and resonates with what your goals are. Okay, if you step into a career and you're sitting here stripping yourself of all the vital things that you care about, then it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Okay, it doesn't mean anything. So I understand that. And I think these things through. And this is why, I wanted to leave BT Trucking so bad. I hated BT Trucking. Okay, it would have been decent, and I actually liked the job more when I was just an administrative assistant. And I was fine with that. I was like fine coming in. I shared an office with a girl. Her name was Jerry. We shared an office, and I would have. It should have just stayed that way. Should have just stayed that way. Okay. Then I got a promotion to the office manager. Okay, fine. Okay. Then it got, then I was a COO, and it just got more and more ridiculous. And I take my profession seriously. There are certain ideas and concepts that I wanted to introduce to, a company that I could feel passionate about, and I felt like I was just sucked dry. And the thing is that you're sucking my life, my years where I could have found a job where I could have really made a difference and done something that I felt productive and liked going to my job and liked, sharing my ideas and doing something that really resonated with me. And then because these people were selfish, narcissistic, and kept me in a certain place that only made me feel like shit every day. But they wanted me to feel like shit so that they could feel good. No, I don't think so. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Each person in this world is responsible, at least in the United States, we're responsible for ourselves. Okay? What those kind of people are called are codependent people. They're codependent. And codependency comes in many forms in certain relationships. Just like, the guy who wants to try to make a girl jealous or whatever, that in way is a kind of codependency. Okay. And I remember when I used to like this boy, when I was a teenager, I used to have this disgustingly huge crush on this boy in high school. Okay. And I would walk all the way from the east side of town to the west side of town just to see him, just to see this man sweep the fucking floor at Kmart. Okay. Cause he had the little butterflies in my stomach floating, right? And so I remember my dad said, you know what? If you really like him, just walk up and tell him that you like him. Just tell him that you like him. You know what I mean? Cause my dad was somebody who didn't like games. And the older I get, I don't like games either. You know what I mean? Because to me, it's like trivializing a relationship or trivializing a friend or whatever. And I'm not into that either. To me, it somehow it diminishes the sincerity that could exist within that relationship. See, at 54 years old, for somebody who has the views that I do, for some people, it's a shame that I don't get married because, I'm somebody who knows how to love. I mean, really love. Okay. Not without money, not with money or even thinking I'm going to use you in any way at all. Okay. So this is the reason why I don't like these ideas of forced Christian marriages, which is exactly what I think my parents, Mary Gordon and James Gordon, had, okay? And my father, resented my mother at times, and my mother felt extremely desperate, feeling unloved, and it was easy to invalidate her anytime, you wanted to as a housewife. You know, when she heard of my father having other affairs or whatever, you know, the only thing that she was designed to be, according to this particular setup, was to be his wife, to be faithful to this man. Even when there were times where he didn't even show her that he even cared about her. That was supposed to be her world. That's how it was. Okay. So if he was like, you know, showing that he was interested perhaps maybe in Diana Ross or whoever, that's all it took to invalidate her entire existence. Okay. So I remember one time my mom came down the hall and she was just crying. You know, she was hysterical. And she was telling me that my dad, you know, was confessing to her some of the affairs that he had, right? And I felt really bad for her, but at the same time, it's like, well, what the hell do you expect? What do you expect? If you think about how marriages are put together and how, you know, I'm not saying all marriages. I'm just saying is, you know, these what do you call it? How do they introduce them? They call them like kingdom spouses or whatever. It's not just putting people together because you're trying to, you know, gather wealth. What do you call it? Compatibility matters. Harmony matters. You know what I mean? They put people in relationships and suddenly this person is expected to change everything in their entire life to accommodate some sort of marriage, okay? And guess what? You're walking right into misery. No, I would not give up my things, the things that I like and the things that I love in order to get into a marriage. Either if I was marrying material, my husband would have to be the kind of person that we like the same things. I would be interested in finding somebody where we have that compatibility. Because how are you going to raise your kids if you build it on that sort of foundation to where it's only about money? Then you're going to be arguing about how you raise your kids and all these other. Your standards have to be in alignment. And I understand that there's times where people can't agree on everything. Okay, I fully get that. But the underlying core better be harmony for the majority. There are certain people who click and there's certain people who don't. You know what I mean? So I understand those things as well. You know what I mean? So I really get tired of other people. Do not ever impose your life on me ever again. I don't care who you are. Do not impose yourself onto me. I don't make an effort to impose it on in my life onto other people. So don't impose yourself onto me because that's considered rude. But it goes above beyond that. With these people, and I'm talking about this in my video about, you know, the difference between rudeness and harassment. These people, what they did to me, it warrants legal consequences. Okay? It warrants legal consequences. It has affected me psychologically, and number one, it has affected me monetarily. Okay, I am somebody who understands the law, and when it comes to, you know, my personal views, I do not believe in sacrificing my life for anybody. No one is worthy of that. Okay, so my stupid, you know, idiotic mother who sat here and tried to, you know, plan all these schemes. It's her behavior is inappropriate. You know, I talked about, you know, people not knowing what is rude behavior, what is acceptable behavior, and that sort of stuff. Like I said, a lot of it comes down from the fact that it could be generational ignorance, okay, on top of neglect. You know what I mean? There might have been somebody who was raised in a decent, you know, lifestyle or whatever when they were young, but then they end up having a family of their own, adopting like a burden baby, and because they don't spend time with the burden baby, they're not explaining any life lessons to the burden baby. So the burden baby is just kind of trying to figure things out on their own. And the only reason why I know the things that I know is because I have a very inquisitive mind. And so I was interested in reading about that kind of stuff, and a lot of it's just past life stuff, you know, from the other times. And don't get me wrong, my parents did discipline me. Like when we learned how to do certain things, they would bring up things like the law and stuff like that. But of course, there were times where I felt as though they would punish us for reasons that were more, you know, letting out their anger than really providing any guidance or direction. It was more that to me, in a lot of times, I would say could have been borderline abuse because, you know, I love my father, right? But, you know, my father would spank us with tree branches, belts, you know, stuff like that. And a lot of times he was spanking us not because he was trying to teach us the lesson, he was doing it out of anger. We just frustrated him a little bit too much, you know what I mean? And so he ended up getting the belt and spanking us. And they sometimes people pat themselves on the back and thinking, you know, I did a good job. That was not a good job. Okay, it wasn't a good job. It wasn't a good job. Discipline is when you teach people lessons on how to avoid those sort of things that create problems in the first place. You know, teaching them lessons. Why do we wear our seatbelts? You know, why do we do these sort of things? things that can protect them, you know what I mean? Or safeguard them or whatever ahead of time before it happens. You know, when your kid drops, smears, crap all over the wall and you end up beating him, did you ever tell him not to respect your property and show him steps on how to respect the property in the first place? Tell him that, in this particular, paper is what we draw on. We draw on paper. We don't draw on walls. Okay? You teach him these things before they even happen. This is what I'm talking about. We don't have good parenting, and we haven't really ever. So that's what I'm talking about. It's just, we live in an ignorant society. We live in a lawless society. We have laws, but they're ignorant of it. And so this is why I'm talking about. We need things like moral resets. We do. Okay. And like I said, hopefully it will be filed with the state. And then I was also coming up with some other ideas as far as, people who have been victims of human trafficking. I understand that there's data banks that some people use, like when it comes to blacklisting. You know what I mean? I blacklisting should have never happened. Are these churches and stuff like that doing these sort of underground type stuff to black people? I blacklist people. Do I believe that? Yes, I do. This is one of the reasons why you can get blacklisted in one state and get blacklisted in another. And when you think about it being blacklisted through electronic means, this is what I'm talking about: the federal harassment laws. Spreading things about people from one area to another to where it makes it impossible for them to survive. This sort of stuff is illegal for a reason. Okay? It's like a lot of thoughtless people get involved in this kind of stuff, and then people who also, have ill intentions. I do not forgive Diana Ross. What else? Okay, now they're talking about the issue about me buying whatever I want. Like I said, they hated me so much. They resent the fact when you go to things like the dollar store. I kid you not. If you go to the dollar store, they're sitting here watching. What did she buy at the dollar store? She doesn't need a pencil case. She doesn't need a pencil case. I'm going to tell this person, not knock it off or whatever. I mean, I can't believe she's so pathetic that she'd even have to sit here and do that. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. Anyway, people are talking to Elon, and yes, I'm sending my stuff directly to the state. Because I do want to protect myself from intrusion. I do know that people have grabbed hold of my, Patreon and stuff like this. And, it would be dangerous. Okay, what we just experienced with the DEI thing and the demoralization of people going to work and all of the dark stuff that has cast itself, the dark shadow that has cast itself over, the gloom that has been casting over America for I would say at least a good 7.5 years. Okay, this hopelessness that's going on is because of this sort of stuff, and I'm trying to offer a solution on how to fix it. Okay, so if we have double agents in these organizations, such as maybe they might have the secretary of the Department of California Education, send it to her, and she might be a Mormon or a Baptist or somebody else who doesn't believe that I should exist. Okay, so she's playing games, or maybe she's trying to support my mom or whatever. The fact is, I want my stuff to go to the appropriate person without interruption and without somebody trying to take it and maybe trying to monetize it or something. These people to me are that low. Okay, I care about the future of, I may not be here, but I want to make sure that before I do die, that human trafficking is eradicated, as well as people who the overly dependent, they need to go. The overly dependent and the sickly opportunist, they need to go. Okay, I mean, literally, I want it so that we choke these people out. They don't exist anymore. Okay, and if they're not able to survive, if they're not able to come up with ideas or create some sort of industry, then too fucking bad. Let the people who have these sort of strengths be able to do that, instead of keeping people down through these illegal operations. Anyway, is there something else I want to say? Okay, a lot of the celebrities and politicians are starting to adhere to my moral system. Like I said, I was never trying to force this on anybody. It's just that people were trying to, bully me, and I'm trying to stand up for myself and explaining the reasons why I do the things that I do. Okay, I also get the message that people are accepting and understanding of me making these multiple videos. Sometimes I'll make several videos about the same topic or whatever. This is very painful for me. Very, very painful for me. You know, anyway, I'm going to wrap this video up. I will be sending it to the directly to the people, you know, and yes, it did cross my mind to involve Elon Musk in this at one time. But see, I really want to make sure that I want to make sure that Elon knows that I like him for him and not for what I think he can do for me. So I understood that this was a very sensitive situation. You know what I mean? I don't ever want somebody to ever, I don't ever want to make somebody feel like I'm sucking them dry when I'm trying to be their friend. Okay, and it's important that I uphold that standard. I know people think it's weird, but it's like I said, I know what it's like for people to be leeches, and I don't want him to ever feel like I'm doing that. I do not ever want him to feel that I would do that to him. You know what I mean? Because I feel as though there's a too much in, you know, dehumanization within that sort of industry anyway. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up this video, and I will be back with another video sometime later. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. Enjoy some time to yourself. Peace.